Hello, welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, June 28th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We are halfway through the week. The week is going by very fast. We've got a lot to get into today on the program. Very frustrating night last night if you're a New York Yankees fan. A disgusting performance to fall to the A's 2-1. Outside of a Josh Donaldson solo shot, the Yankees had 7 hits, and that was it. And Josh Donaldson, too, I mean, he still looks at pitches right down the middle and was still striking out, looking at pathetic performance. The Yankees' offense is a complete disaster. It is embarrassing. It is everything, every bad word you can think of to describe the Yankees' offense last night would fit the way that they played, losing 2-1 to an A's team that went into the game 40 games under 500. And I don't need to sit here and tell you how bad the Oakland A's have been. They're the worst team in baseball, and they're the worst team in baseball by a long shot. So I don't need to sit here and dissect the A's roster and dissect the A's this season as to how bad they've been. We all know how bad they were. And I'm going to lose game 1 of a 3-game set is pathetic for the New York Yankees. So look, they look to bounce back today. I said going into this road trip, the bare minimum, you've got to go 4-2. The least you can do is take 2 of 3 against the A's, take 2 of 3 against the Cardinals. That's the bare minimum. Now, well, obviously, I said 5-1 would be, to me, close a little bit above the bare minimum. I mean, you should be able to sweep the A's, but the Yankees couldn't do that. So you got to find a way to win these next 2 games. Anything less than 4-2 is pathetic. That means you at least lost 1 series, which losing a series to either the A's or the Cardinals is just unacceptable. The A's being the worst team in baseball and the Cardinals being one of the biggest disappointments in baseball this year. You got to find a way to win these next 2 and find a way to win against the Cardinals and take 2 of 3 and at least have a 4-2 road trip. I thought 5-1 was in play. You sweep the A's, you take 2 of 3 against St. Louis. But after that disgrace of a performance last night, who knows what we're going to get out of this Yankee team? And it's the same guys not producing. So we'll get into it to start today's show. A good win last night for the Mets. Steve Cohen will speak later today. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Yankees tonight, second game of 3-game set against the A's. Maybe they score 3 runs. I don't know. Maybe they decide to hit tonight. Maybe. I mean, outside of a Josh Donaldson solo shot, and even he didn't have a good game. And even in the games that Josh Donaldson homers in, I don't know what the record is, but I don't believe it's very good. Solo shot, not going to do much. Strikes out looking, still having a horrible season. Why is he still on this team? Stanton looks lost at the plate, and your same guys aren't producing. The one positive last night was Anthony Volpe. You could throw Johnny Brito in there as well. I mean, he threw, 5 2/3, I think, 2 runs allowed. I mean, against the A's, that should get the job done. You shouldn't only put up one run against the Oakland A's in 7 hits. But one of the positives was Volpe. He went out there and gave you 3 hits last night, got the batting average above the Mendoza line. He's now hitting 203 on the year. He's had a very good couple, about really the last week and a half here, he's had a very good stretch. He did get caught stealing, though, so that was a negative. But either way, topics for today's podcast. We're going to get into the Yankees last night, the debacle. We'll mention it. We'll talk about it a little bit, as we just did. But I want to take a look at 2 names to look out for the New York Yankees as we get closer to the trade deadline. Because watching last night's debacle, continuing to watch this team fail the way they have, I want to get into 2 options, 2 players that are under the radar, 2 guys that I think could be big acquisitions for this team and hopefully turn things around for the 2023 Yankees. Obviously, there's another big name out there that might seem realistic, but it's going to take a lot to get that guy. So I'm going to look at 2 more realistic options for the Yankees to look at come trade deadline, and 2 guys that are big needs for this team right now as they currently sit fresh off a loss against the Oakland A's. So we'll get into that to start today's program. I also want to get into the Mets, and Steve Cohen is going to speak today. What should Mets fans expect from Steve Cohen today? What is the bare minimum? What do you need to hear from Steve Cohen today in order to gain some trust, in order to gain some clarity, in order to maybe gain some hope that maybe this season can be renewed, or there's going to be change, or there's going to be action, or is it going to be the same old where Steve Cohen goes out there and says, I trust in Buck Showalter, I trust Billy Epler, I trust this roster, and basically repeats what Bailey Epler said yesterday prior to the 7-2 win. So we'll get to that later on as well, and obviously get you ready for the 2 games tonight. Yankees-A's game, 2 of a 3-game set. Mets versus Brewers tonight against, or for the 3rd game of 4-game set. And the Mets need to at least win these next 2 games, or else they officially close out the month of June without a series win. So we'll see if the Mets can do that over these next 2 days. But we'll start off today with the Yankees and looking at the trade deadline. So obviously the trade deadline's getting close. August 1st, I believe, is the deadline. So we're still, a good month away from it, but we're getting closer. You go into the All-Star break, that's usually a very good point to see where teams are at. If you go into the All-Star break, organizations kind of make their decisions, figure out, all right, even though it's not the literal halfway point of the season, not literally 81 games in and 81 games to go in the full 162, that's basically the halfway point. Teams go into the All-Star break and say, you know what, let's see where we're at. Where's this roster at? Should we buy? Should we sell? Should we stay put? What do we do at the trade deadline? And teams will, make those decisions. The Mets are going to have to make a tough decision at the trade deadline. They're going to need to either figure out to buy. They're going to need to figure out whether or not to sell. They need to figure out, hey, we're 8.5 games out right now. We're 8 games out of a wild card spot right now. If we buy, do we have enough? Can we bring in enough pieces, 8.5 games out of a wild card spot, to maybe make a run and make a push? Or is it not worth it? Or should we sell? Or should we just stay put and address things in the offseason and see if the team we currently have can maybe catch fire? Now, for the Yankees, they're in an interesting spot because they're in a wild card position right now. It's not safe. They're, the Angels and the Orioles, currently 3 of them hold wild card spots. Now, the Blue Jays are a half game back. The Astros are a game back. And the Red Sox are 3.5 back. The Guardians, I don't even consider them a threat because the Guardians stink. But the Red Sox are 3.5 back. It's mainly going to be because the Orioles are plus 5.5 up. They're going to make the playoffs. And they're gonna make a run for a World Series. The Orioles have what it takes. I mean, their pitching's a concern, but you assume they address that at the trade deadline. We'll see the Orioles approach and what they do, because I know the Orioles don't want to give up too much of their farm either. They've got a very good farm system. They've got a lot of guys coming up, like Jackson Holliday, who's obviously in the futures game this year and one of the top prospects in all baseball. So they're not going to give up a ton for a big time pitcher, but I do think they should add to their rotation. We'll see what the Orioles can do, but it's mainly a 4-team race. It's the Yankees, the Angels, the Blue Jays, and the Astros. And I was going to do this either way today, looking at 2 guys that I'm interested in, the Yankees, that they can go after at the deadline. But especially after last night's game, especially after watching that disgrace of a performance last night, the Yankees need, if they want any chance of making a run, they're going to need to make moves. They can't stand pat with this roster. They're going to need to make moves, and they're going to need to make moves fast come trade deadline. Now, who knows? Are the Yankees going to, I would assume the Yankees are going to make moves. I mean, Hal Steinbrenner continues to sit here and say to us fans that they don't want to lose. They're the same goal every year is to win a championship. So you do assume they're going to make moves. I don't think the Yankees are just going to stand pat at the trade deadline and just watch some of these big names go off the board. Obviously, the biggest name out there is Juan Soto. And we're hearing reports that things are ugly in San Diego. I mean, the Padres have been an absolute, them and the Mets have been the 2 biggest disappointments this year. And the Cardinals have as well. They're 12 games under 500 at 33-45 last in the NL Central. Those 3 teams have probably been the biggest disappointments this season in terms of 3 teams that many thought can make deep runs for championships, 3 teams in the National League. Mets find themselves in 4th. Cardinals find themselves in last. Padres find themselves in 4th, only ahead of the dreadful Colorado Rockies, who basically punted the season before it even started when the general manager went out and said, I think we can play 500 baseball. That was the baseline. That was the okay for the Colorado Rockies. They're a train wreck. Padres have been as well. So we're hearing the possibility of Juan Soto. We're hearing that, where they currently sit, there's trouble in the locker room. The stars are kind of going after each other. That there's a rift in the locker room. They're kind of like the locker room's lost. Bob Melvin has basically lost the locker room. The guys aren't getting along. There's a rift. There's a clear disagreement there. So Juan Soto seems like he could potentially be available. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think the Yankees, personally, I don't think the Yankees are going to go out and trade for Juan Soto. I think that's unrealistic. I just don't see Brian Cashman doing that. Every year we talk about Cashman going out and getting one of these big-time stars, and he never does. He always settles on a washed-up veteran. So I just don't see that happening. But two guys that are more realistic, in my opinion, that the Yankees can go after, and it's starting to gain more and more steam. And I've looked at one of the guys over the past month, especially with the way the outfield situation has been with Judge hurt and Stanton not producing and Bader just coming off the IL, but was obviously hurt there for a little while, 2 IL stints this season, and where the outfield has been. Now, Billy McKinney, I know, has been good and has been solid and maybe, hangs on to this team for the rest of the way as a depth piece, depending on how much longer Judge is out. But it's two Nationals, and it's Lane Thomas and it's Jeimer Candelario. So, again, Lane Thomas, right fielder, outfielder for the Nationals. Jeimer Candelario would come in as a third baseman. Lane Thomas has been a guy that I've looked out for a little bit now. He's been a guy that could definitely be on the Yankees' radar, could definitely be a trade option for the Nationals. He has had a very good season, right fielder, phenomenal, very, solid outfielder, very good at the plate in the middle of a career season in many different statistical categories. Been the Nationals' best hitter and best player, really. I mean, they're not, the Nationals are obviously a team. They're 31-48. They're 21 games back in a division and 13.5 back on the wild card. So the Nationals have no chance. They were the worst team in baseball last year, record-wise, losing 100-plus games last season. Look, they're better this year. They're more competitive, but they're still 17 games under 500. They're going to be sellers. I don't know if they're going to completely sell like they did last year, but I could see a scenario where they do a package deal similar to what they did last year with Josh Bell and Juan Soto. Find a way to package a deal and bring in Lane Thomas and Candelario and kill two birds with one stone. You get another outfielder, and you bring in a third baseman, which has been one of the biggest weaknesses for the Yankees this year, where DJ LeMahieu has been, not producing. And Josh Donaldson, I don't even know why he's still on the roster, and I've mentioned it many times on this program. So you get two very solid players that you can bring in. Now, here's the thing, and we'll get into the numbers here in a second and potentially what the Yankees could give up. Lane Thomas is 27 years old. He'll be 28 in August. Jeimer Candelario is 29. He'll be 30 in November. So he'll be 30 at the start of next year. Now, Lane Thomas made his debut in 2019. Jeimer Candelario made his debut in 2016. The Nationals are going through a youth movement. In my opinion, I think there's a better chance Jeimer Candelario gets traded than Lane Thomas. Number one, the age is a factor. Next season, Jeimer Candelario will be in his age 30 season. We don't really know how much, he's in the middle of one of his best years of his career with 10 home runs, batting .262, and he's got an OPS over 800. But he is a free agent at the end of this season. And that could be, an issue for the Nationals. So he's a guy that, if anything, the Nationals are going to go out. I think, if anything, the Nationals will ultimately trade him over a Lane Thomas for a couple reasons. Again, free agent at the end of this year, which they might as well get something for a guy in the middle of a career season instead of just letting him walk at the end of the year. He's going to be entering his age 30 season next year. He's a little bit older, been in the league a little bit longer. He's a veteran. The Nationals are going more for a youth movement. Or you can go with Lane Thomas, where, again, I really would like Lane Thomas. I would love to bring him in, but it seems a little bit more realistic that Candelario gets traded because Lane Thomas is going to be with the Nationals for a little bit, longer here. I think his contract goes until about 2025, 2026. He's younger. He's still in his 20s. He's 27 right now. He'll be 28. He's been in the league since 2019. Like, he's not at, and again, he's a guy that he could be a staple there for the Nationals for the next, 4 or 5 years. As opposed to Jeimer Candelario, probably not going to come back at the end of this year anyway. He's a veteran on a rebuilding team. He was kind of just a stopgap for the season. And now you can get some value for him, similar to the way they did last year, where they traded away Josh Bell. And obviously Juan Soto is different, but Josh Bell was a veteran. He was going to leave anyway. Might as well get, some type of value for him while you can. So it'll be interesting to see if they do a package deal like that. You're going to have to give up, I think, a decent amount for Lane Thomas, and I'll tell you why. He's got a .299 batting average this year. That's 10th in the major league. So he's top 10 in the MLB in batting average. He's got 14 home runs. He's got 43 RBIs, on base percentage of 347, and he's got an OPS of 864. Now, his OPS ranks 22nd in the MLB. So he's top 25 in OPS, and he's 10th in the MLB in batting average. Now, when you look at some of the things that he leads the team in, he leads the Nationals in batting average, home runs, RBIs, on base percentage, and hits with 92. He leads the team in all those categories. He's in the middle of a career year. You're getting a very hot hitter. You're getting a contact guy that bats .299. Not a huge power guy, but he is in the middle of a power surge. Last year in 146 games, he hit 17 home runs. This year, in 78 games, he's hit 14 home runs. He's hit 43 home runs in his 6-year career. He's not a huge power guy, but he is in the middle of a season where he's hitting for a lot more power than he has. And the Nationals as a whole aren't a huge power-hitting team, but their two big power hitters are Lane Thomas and Jeimer Candelario. Lane Thomas with 14 homers, Candelario with 10 homers, which is obviously second on the team, only behind Thomas. So he's in the middle of a career. He's career batting average, .254, as I mentioned this season, .299. His career on base, .323. This season, .347. His career slugging, .441. This season, .516. And his career OPS, .764. This year, .864, which, as I mentioned, top 25 in baseball, currently 22nd in the MLB this season. So I would love to bring in a guy like Lane Thomas. I think he provides a little bit, he's not a huge power guy, but he's probably on his way to maybe 23 home runs this year, 4 home runs. If he can get, if he can get 10 to 12 more home runs the rest of the season. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but about halfway through the year, he's at 14. You assume he hits 14 if he stays healthy the second half. He can maybe hit 20, maybe hits 12, 13 the second half. He can probably get to about 25, 26 home runs this year, which isn't a crazy amount. But for a guy that his career high is 17 and his career has hit 43 and he averages 7 per season, to hit 26 home runs is a pretty good number for a guy like that. So he's not a huge power guy, but he provides a little bit of that pop. He's contact, batting .299. And, he's just been so consistent this season. He's got 43 RBIs as well. This month he's batting .333. He's red hot. I always say this. I always like when teams try and go out and get guys that are hot at the deadline, because you want guys at the deadline that are hot. You want guys at the deadline that are playing their best baseball, because you need them to help you for those 2 months. You need them to be playing their best baseball. Not a guy that hit great in April and great in May, and then struggled in June and struggled in July, and you could still say, oh, we're going to bring him in anyway. You want a guy that's playing his best baseball, is at his peak of the season, so he can continue to help you the rest of the way. Not a guy that was hitting well in April and May, and then maybe a little bit into June, and now is in like a month-long slump. You're getting a guy that this month is hitting this is his slash line this month. .333, .364, .656, 1.020. Got an OPS this month over 1,000. And, again, the power numbers this month have been huge. He's hit 3 home runs over the really last week. He's been hitting a lot for power. He's got 6 of his 14 home runs have come this month. Having a very good year. So, again, I would love the acquisition. I would really like the acquisition of Lane Thomas. It's not a Juan Soto. I don't think Brian Cashman's going to go out and get a Juan Soto, but this team needs help. This team needs help immediately. And bringing in a guy like Lane Thomas that is hitting .299, is 10th in the MLB in batting average. The Yankees aren't hitting for contact. They don't have many guys that are able to drive guys in runners in scoring position. They're too reliant on the home run ball. They just scored 1 run against the A's. They need a boost to this lineup. Lane Thomas can provide you that at a lower cost than a Juan Soto. And Juan Soto is obviously, he's one of the best players in the game. But, again, let's be realistic here. Is Brian Cashman really going to go out and get a Juan? Probably not. The Yankees have had their chances at Juan Soto, and they never went after him. You have another chance. I just don't see it happening. Juan Soto's a different spectrum. Like, he's on a different level. Being realistic, Lane Thomas is one of the top trade targets, I think, for the Yankees. So then you look at more of Jeimer Candelario and what he brings to the table. I think he's probably, we'll see how long Judge is back him. And again, Lane Thomas can obviously play right field. That's his primary position. who knows how long Judge is going to be out. If Judge is out until August, let's just say, until late August, I mean, you can't just, I'm sorry, I like Billy McKinney, I like Jake Bauers. Those guys have been good. Bauers had another hit last night. Like, those guys have been fine, but you're just going to continue to, Billy McKinney, maybe he stays on as a depth piece, but those guys can't start for you every day for the next month and 2 months. They just can't. Like, you can't go into September, Judge finally comes back, and have Billy McKinney and Jake Bauers in the lineup every day for the next 2 months. That just can't happen. You need that to change. And it's obviously not working. But another big need here is obviously the third base. And as I mentioned, it's LeMahieu. And it's Donaldson, who's been terrible. Now, do they call it Peraza? And maybe, they call it Peraza and, maybe they catch a lightning in a bottle with him. That's why, personally, I would call it Peraza now. And my thought process is, again, the deadline is August 1st. So you've got time. Call it Peraza now. Give him a month. See what he does. And if you're still not getting production there, if he's not producing, then go out and trade for a guy like a Candelario. He's a free agent at the end of the year. It's a low-risk move. If it doesn't work out, he's gone at the end of the season anyway. And he's going to be a lot cheaper probably than a Lane Thomas. But again, I would personally package these guys in a deal. I would personally say, hey, give me Lane Thomas and Jameer Candelario. Give me an outfielder that we need, and give me a third baseman that's even a bigger need because third base has been dreadful this year for the Yankees. Give me those two guys. We'll give you prospects, and let's get this deal done. And maybe Lane Thomas sticks. Again, this is a guy that isn't going to be a free agent until a couple years from now. Candelario will be obviously after this year. He just signed a 1 year, $5 million kind of rental deal with the Nationals that needed a veteran there. So, again, that's why I would call it Peraza now and say, hey, look, see what Peraza can do. If Peraza's hitting 330 and raking and dominating, maybe you don't need a guy like Candelario. But if you call him up and he's hitting 220 by the end, when the trade deadline comes, and you're still not getting production there, and he's struggling, LeMahieu's still not hitting, he's still hitting in the 230s, 240s, then you say, you know what, strike this trade. When you look at Candelario this season and what he's done, he's got 10 home runs, as I mentioned, that's second on the Nationals. He's got 37 RBIs, that's third on the Nationals. He leads the team with 25 doubles. He's got an 805 OPS, that's third on the team. He's got 75 hits, that's fourth on the team. So he's been one of their better players, obviously. And again, that's not a huge accomplishment. It's the Nationals. They're a rebuilding team. It's not like he's got numbers up against some of the best MLB players in the league. But overall in the season, 262, 336, 469, 805 slash line. And in his career, when you look at his career numbers, he's a career 243 hitter. This season, he's batting 262. He's a career 324 on base. This year, he's got 336 on base. He's a career slugging of 409 this season, 469. And he's a career 732 OPS. This season, he's got an 805 OPS, which is only the third time in his MLB career, dating back to 2016, or dating back to the 2016 season. Really, it's only the second time because in 2017, he only played, 38 games, 27 of those with the Tigers, where he had an OPS over 874. But this is really only the second time in his MLB career where he's had an OPS over 800. The other time was the 52 games he played in the shortened 2020 COVID season. So really, this is a career year when you look at the numbers through 75 games. And again, not a guy that provides a ton of pop, not a guy that hits a ton of homers, but he's a switch hitter, which is extremely valuable. And his pop would be a whole lot better. His power numbers would increase a whole lot with the short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium. And I know that we've said that a lot, but it's the truth. Like, you look at his Baseball Savant page, he'd have a lot more home runs right now if he was at Yankee Stadium. He's got 10 home runs this season. And again, his career high in home runs, 19, which he hit in 2018. 75 games in, he's got 10 home runs. He's probably on his way to a 20 home run season or around his career high. He's going to be near his career high. You bring him on the Yankees, his pop, his home runs are going to increase because of the short porch and his switch hitting ability. I always like going out and getting switch hitters. I think switch hitters are extremely valuable. Unfortunately, the Yankees have had bad luck where, Oswaldo Cabrera has been awful this season. He's got to spend more than a couple days in Scranton. He needs a full reset. He's been awful this season, and obviously Aaron Hicks is gone, but he was terrible. So getting a switch hitter that can produce 260 batting average, both these guys can, hit a little bit for contact. Like, the Yankees don't have many of these high average guys. They don't. And this month he's batting .256. He's got an .825 OPS. Candelario. Last month he was .295. So again, you're getting two guys that are hot. You're getting two guys that are playing their best baseball of the season if this continues going into the trade deadline, which is obviously still a month away. But looking at these two options, I want to hear your thoughts. Leave your comments down below. At Bubbs52, you can hit me up on Twitter or the comment section down below. Candelario, Lane Thomas, do those interest you? Do you like those two options? After watching that disgrace last night, I had to come on here today and try and find some solutions for the Yankees. Candelario brings you some lefty pop, which would, his home runs would increase at Yankee Stadium. He's a .260 hitter, can provide a little bit of contact, can provide a boost, good defensively, third base. He's only here, he'll be a free agent at the end of the year. It's a low-risk move. It's probably not going to cost a ton. The Nationals are probably just going to look for any type of value. Lane Thomas is going to cost a lot more. It's going to be a lot tougher to get him. You're going to have to give up a lot more for him because I think the Nationals, I could definitely see him being a part of the Nationals' future plan as he kind of just enters like the prime of his career. He's like in the prime of his career right now, and the Nationals are going to want that type of guy for the next 3 to 4 seasons. So he'll be tougher to get, but you got a guy batting .299 and an outfielder that you need. And you get a guy in Jeimer Candelario where third base has been dreadful this year. I can't sit every night and watch Josh Donaldson much longer. I just can't do it. It's so hard to sit there, especially West Coast games where you got to stay up late. Sit there and watch Josh Donaldson look at pitches right down the middle. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So Jeimer Candelario feels that need. Again, maybe you call up Peraza, which I don't know if the Yankees are going to do that. Even if you call it Peraza, though, I still don't think it's a bad idea. And again, it's still a month away. Injuries can happen. Who knows how the rest of the infield's going to be. But I still don't think it's a bad idea to bring in Candelario, even if you call it Peraza. Because I think naturally, Peraza's going to go through stretches where he's going to have growing pains and he's going to struggle. So to have that insurance, to have Candelario there, it would be tough, though, just the roster management, because then you have 4 third basemen, including LeMahieu. And look, LeMahieu's not going to play. He could play second and short, but if Peraza comes up and plays well, I don't think, they would have to probably eventually DFA, Donaldson. They're not going to bring on Candelario, Donaldson, and LeMahieu, and then if Peraza gets into the mix, it's just not going to happen. So, if Candelario comes here, it's probably going to be, you're going to have to DFA Donaldson. So that's why, again, I would give Peraza a month. Give him a full month. DFA Donaldson right now. Bring in Peraza for a month and see what he can do. If he's hitting .220 by the deadline, strike that trade. If he's hitting if he's hitting if he's hitting .270 or even .260 or even .250 and playing good defense, then you say, you know what? No need to give up assets. Maybe go all in for a Lane Thomas, right? Or somebody like that. I'm not saying go all in and give up your top prospects, but I'm saying instead of giving up prospects and pieces for Candelario and how great would it be to just trade up Josh Donaldson for Candelario straight up? It'd be that would be fun. That would be a win-win for it wouldn't be a win for the Nationals, but and the Nationals too, like their third base spot has been interesting ever since Rendon has left. They've kind of just ran with just veterans that they bring in for a year and then they usually get rid of them in the offseason. Like last year, the main third baseman I believe for a while there was Mike Franco, who mainly played third base. He played 103 games there. I'm trying to look who else potentially could have played there as well. What was the main third baseman for the Nationals last season? And he didn't have a good year. He had a very bad season, but was there, played 103 games, which isn't a ton. But he was like their veteran. Now I believe they got rid of. I think he was on the team all the way through. I don't know, but either way. And then they had Cesar Hernandez, who was also there last season for the whole year. Hasn't got picked up by a team this season, but the Nationals have kind of like played with veterans over the past like year or two where they just bring in a guy 1-year contract. Now they've got more youth. Like Abrams is most likely a part of their future. I know he's kind of had an up and down year. He's been better recently. Again, Lane Thomas, they got Victor Robles, who's been hurt all year. So I don't know. The Nationals are a rebuilding team. They're going to want prospects. They're going to want young pieces. But I think Candelario is probably going to be easier to get, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. All right, so that'll do it for talking a little bit of Yankees. Again, hit me up on Twitter, @Bubbs52. Your thoughts on the potential of bringing in Elaine Thomas and Jameer Candelario. Those two guys definitely intrigue me. And also, hit me up in the comment section down below if you would like to do that as well. Your thoughts on the two potential trade options. Anybody else you're looking at? I know, the Jock Petersons and the Cody Bellingers are out there. And look, I know Bellinger's definitely an intriguing name. Jock Peterson, early in the season, I would have said it would have happened. I don't think it's going to happen now because when you look at the Giants, they're right in the heart of a playoff race. So I don't necessarily see the Giants 2.5 games back of the Diamondbacks in the NL West and holding a wild card spot currently. I don't see the Giants selling at the deadline, especially with them currently in the playoffs. So Jock Peterson might be more of an unrealistic option. If you would have told me a month ago, I was all bored. Like I said, you could bring in Jock Peterson, definitely an option. I thought, the Giants weren't playing well. They were probably going to sell at the deadline. But now that they're playing well, now that they're one of the hotter teams in baseball, I don't foresee them. And again, we're still a month out, but I just don't maybe see the Giants necessarily being sellers now that they're right in the mix for the postseason in the National League, which is wide open. The National League is wide open right now. It's a crazy season in the National League. So, if the Phillies get hot and the Nationals and the Dodgers aren't able to overtake the Diamondbacks or able to get hot again, like the Dodgers right now aren't necessarily, they're in the playoffs, but they've got the Phillies right behind them. I know the Phillies are like 3-4 games back, so they do got some breathing room, but the Phillies are starting to get, they're starting to kind of find their groove, it seems. They've, finally getting healthy. They're starting to find it a little bit, but the Dodgers aren't necessarily safe either. They're holding currently the last playoff spot in the National League. It's the Marlins, Giants, Dodgers. So, and then you look at the division leaders, and it's the Braves who you'd expect. I don't think anybody expected the Diamondbacks. In the NL Central, it's the Reds. The National League is just a wild, wild beast this season. It really is. All right, so now I move on here to the New York Mets, who got a pretty good win last night, I will admit. It was a good win for the Mets. Again, an ugly night for the Yankees, but a good win for the Mets. I'm watching the Met game, obviously, before the Yankee game came on. I probably watched a good, 8 innings of the Met game, 7 innings or so. I turned it off, I think, right after they got out of the inning where they had 2 runners on. They actually scored. The Mets actually, the Brewers actually scored. But they got the win 7-2. And I was getting ready. I was hoping, and maybe, again, I was cocky going into this series. I thought for sure the Yankees would sweep the A's. The A's are that bad, and that makes the loss that much terrible. It's not even cocky. It's just you don't have to be a very good baseball team to beat the A's. You've got to be pretty pathetic, which the Yankees are pathetic right now. But the Mets had a good win, and I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be a rare good night for New York baseball. Yankees maybe beat the A's 8-3, 8-2. Mets get a 7-2 victory. All right, good night for New York baseball, but that wasn't the case with the Yankees losing to the A's. But the Mets did get the win 7-2, as I mentioned. They win game 2 of the 4-game set, so their series win in June is still alive. They've yet to win a series in June. It is still alive. They've got to win tonight, and they've got to win tomorrow in order to win 3 of 4 before welcoming San Francisco to town for 3 games starting on Friday, obviously ending on Sunday, the 3-game weekend series. I don't think it's probably going to happen, but we'll see if the Mets can maybe build off of that. Again, it's 1 win. The Mets are currently still sitting at 36-43, 16 games back in the division, which I don't even know why we continue to talk about the division. The division's over. They're 16 games back. It's over. Really where it comes is the wild card, which is basically almost over there too, is they're 8.5 games back. And they've got a ton of teams in front of them that are just, also going to be pushing for the wild card spot. Like, they are really far out. They've dug themselves in a deep hole. So again, Billy Epler spoke yesterday, and there's been a lot of frustrated Mets fans that have been wanting for Steve Cohen to come out and say something. And through this entire time, Steve Cohen has really disappeared, even on Twitter. Like, last season when things were going well, he'd go out on Twitter and tweet. If the Mets won a game, he'd go out there and tweet and say, great win, this and that, blah, 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 blah. You haven't even seen that out of him this year. He's been very silent. He's been very quiet. Seeing all of his big name, big free agent, off-season acquisitions just go to dust to this point has probably been pretty disappointing, probably has been shocking, just like a lot of Met fans and a lot of baseball fans and even Yankee fans like myself. I thought for sure the Mets were going to be one of the better teams in the National League in baseball this year. I was clearly wrong. Many people were clearly wrong. And I will tell you this is one thing about the Yankees that I will give them credit. Brian Cashman at least, and again, don't know why the guy still has a job, shouldn't be the general manager anymore. The Three Stooges, none of them are any good anymore. You know my stance on Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, and Aaron Boone, but at least they do come out and publicly speak to the fans. Again, it's usually a whole lot of nothing. It's Hal Steinbrenner coming out and saying, I'm confused that, I'm confused that why the fans are upset, which was a dumb quote. You've got to be stupid to not know why Yankee fans are upset, especially after watching the game last night. But Brian Cashman does speak. I mean, Billy Epler has I think a couple times this season as well. A lot of times it's a whole lot of nothing. A lot of times it's just reaffirming, hey, we trust Buck Showalter, we trust this roster, or in Brian Cashman's case, it's we trust Aaron Boone, we trust this roster, we trust the process that we're going about, we know this team can turn it around, we know this team is still championship caliber, all that nonsense that we hear all the time. At least he does come out publicly and say that. The Mets, on the other hand, not always. Now, Epler has, but Steve Cohen for a while now have been very quiet, and that's just not normal of him. There's a couple, owners very rarely get their nose into things, very rarely come out and speak. The main guy I can think of is Jerry Jones, obviously, Dallas owner, Cowboys. He's the main guy I can think of in terms of a guy that comes out, like almost daily and talks. Now, he's basically the GM of the Cowboys. I mean, he is the GM of the Cowboys. It's a little bit different. He is the biggest mouth owner in football. He's biggest, not even football and sports. Like out of the four major sports, he's the owner you hear most from. But Steve Cohen was a guy that last year spoke a lot, did a lot on social media when things were going well, and now you haven't heard from him at all. So he'll speak today before the game against the Brewers, third game of obviously a 4-game set at Citi Field before the game. So, now today you get all the fans wondering, what does Steve Cohen need to say to at least put some belief into Mets fans, or have action, or at least make settle Mets fans' minds a little bit, as it's been an absolute train wreck of a season, and it only seems to be getting worse. So, to me, here's what Cohen needs to do. Again, hit me up on Twitter at Bubbs52, and also comment down below, if you're a Mets fan, what do you want to hear from Steve Cohen today? Number one, I think what he's got to at least, I'll start with the things he can't do. He can't go out there today, and I have a bad feeling. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, I'm not a Met fan. I'm a Yankee fan. If Steve Cohen goes out there and says, oh, we believe in Buck Showalter, and says the same thing Billy Epler said just a day later, just from a different person, just from the owner this time, I would just sit there and probably laugh and watch Mets fans be in pain. I mean, it's been a rough baseball season, so I really don't expect anything less, because it's just, that's what we've gotten so far this baseball season, is a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of no accountability. It's been ugly, right? But again, that would be the least. Like, that would be the absolute, why are you going out there? Why did you schedule an appearance before the game today to go out there and say, I trust this organization, or I trust the way we're doing things, I trust this roster, I believe in this team to turn it around, Buck Showalter's the right man for the job, and basically say the exact same thing Billy Epler yesterday, and say nothing of substance. That would be the absolute, just awful, terrible. Now, there are some fans out there. I don't think Steve Cohen's going to go out there and say today, hey, we've relieved Buck Showalter of his duties. You hear some people on social media. I don't know if people are trolling and joking or whatnot, but you see some people on social media say, oh, this is going to be Steve Cohen going out there and firing Buck Showalter publicly. That's not going to happen. So you've got to find the middle ground. I think the least Buck Showalter can say today, or what he should say, or who knows what he's going to say. Not Buck Showalter, Steve Cohen, I apologize. But you schedule an appearance to come out and speak. You barely speak. He said you're going to hear it straight from me. I just have this odd feeling he's not going to, I think he's going to go out there and say something of substance. I don't know what it's quite going to be, but I do think it's going to be something where he's going to try and hold guys accountable. I think he's going to try and show some accountability. But, I don't really know. I mean, he's just, again, he is an owner after all. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be shocked if he just pulls the I believe in everybody card. Everything we're doing is great. It's just a matter of time till things get turned around. Who knows? But either way, the least I think he should say, or what he at least could say, again, he's not going to go out there and fire everybody. I don't think he's going to go out there and say, oh, this team's a disgrace. We're embarrassing. But he should say something about we're going to give this team a couple more weeks going into the All-Star break, see if they can turn this thing around. Everybody's on notice from, myself, the GM, the manager, to the guys on the field. These next 2 weeks will be pivotal. These next 3 weeks going into the trade deadline will be pivotal in terms of the route we take as an organization. The route we take as an organization, both player-wise, roster-wise, and management-wise, with Buck Showalter and Billy Epler. And maybe he says, maybe he goes out and says something like, if we're still playing the way we're playing right now, if we're still 8-9 games under 500 and 8.5 games out of a wild card spot, come the All-Star break or even the trade deadline, changes are going to be made. I think if that is what he says, I think if you're a Mets fan, you shouldn't be thrilled, you shouldn't be happy, but at least you should be like, all right, there's a sense of urgency, there's a sense of accountability. At least there's some sort of change that could take place here within the next month. Basically saying, hey, I don't care what your contract is. I don't care, the manager, GM, everybody's job's on the line the next 10 months. Or the next month. Not 10 months. The next month, right? He could say something like that. Maybe he comes out and says, we're not going to make any changes this season. We're going to kind of stand pat. We're going to reevaluate things in the offseason. Offseason, we'll make changes. If things continue on this trajectory, we'll make, or a question comes in, Steve Cohen, is there going to be a manager change? Billy Epler, do you trust those guys? Again, if he just gives you the good old-fashioned, we believe in them, that's pathetic. But if he gives you, we're not going to change anything in the regular season, but if things continue, there will be changes in the offseason. Maybe he says that. And again, if you're a Mets fan, you shouldn't be thrilled, but at least there's a sense of, all right, things got to turn around for Billy Epler and Buck Showalter. Both of you are out of here. And maybe that lights a fire under him. Maybe that lights a fire under the players or the team. Or maybe he goes out there and even says, hey, look, I know we've got the highest payroll in baseball, but we've got a ton of guys in the minor leagues that are ready. If within the next month, if some of our guys don't start playing up to their ability, they will be benched and I don't think he'll say that. It's probably stupid, but I don't even think Buck Showalter would play them. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I think he's probably going to come out and say something. If I had to predict, he'll probably say how the fans deserve better, how he feels for the fan base. He feels bad for the fans. He'll definitely come out and say that because he was a fan. He's just a very rich fan. I think he understands where the fans' frustration's coming from. They've gone through a lot. The Mets the Mets' organizational history is not very good. It's not. They've won 2 World Series. They've really had no they haven't won a World Series since 1986. There's not a ton to look back on if you're the New York Mets, and they've had a lot of dysfunction, a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad front offices, a lot of just bad teams. So there hasn't been a whole lot to like from the Mets organization in the history. I always say the Mets and the Jets are like the 2 franchises in New York that have had the littlest success. The Jets have won 1 Super Bowl since 1969. The Mets obviously have only won 2 World Series. They haven't won one since 1986. You could throw the Knicks in there, but the Knicks have had a lot of success in the 90s where they were in the playoffs every single season. I know they haven't won a championship in forever, but they've had success most recently. Now they're starting to have some success. Obviously the last decade or so after the Carmelo years where they got to the playoffs in 2013, 2014, it was pretty pathetic there for a while, but they're at least on the right track now. The Mets always seem like every year it seems like they always seem to take a step back. It's like, oh, this is our year. No, it's not. This is our year. No, it's not. Start out well. No, it's not. So he'll probably mention something about the fans. I don't know. I just don't expect him to come out there and say, I don't expect him to come out and say, if things don't change in the next month, there will be major changes. I just don't see that. Maybe he goes out there and says that. I think personally, I'm not trying to be negative, and I'm not trying to say this just because it's the Mets, and I don't like the Mets, but I'm not trying to say that just because of that. I'm truly not. This is just my gut feeling, but maybe this is just, I would probably just assume he's probably going to come out and maybe not quite say, oh, I believe in everybody. This thing is great right now. We just got to turn it around. But I do think he will probably say we still believe in this team. I don't think he's going to say, oh, this team, he's not going to go up there and say this team stinks. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect from Steve Cohen because he's an interesting guy. I could see him being super frustrated right now and saying, hey, I spent all this money. This is my money going down the drain from all these guys just not performing. Buck Showalter, some of his decision-making. And, it's this is my team. I bought this team to win a championship. I said the window would love to win a championship within 2 to 3 years. And here you are playing the same veterans every game. I could see him legitimately being frustrated. I could. I don't know. I don't really know. I think he's probably going to come out and not give you the good old-fashioned, oh, everything's great, things are going to turn around card, but I don't think he's going to give you this team stinks, changes are going to be made, we've got to be better on all. I don't think he's going to give you a full-on rant. And I don't think he's going to fire the coach in the interview. I've seen some people on Twitter say he's going to fire Buck Showalter today in the interview. I just don't see that happening. If he does, I will be shocked, and I will admit I was wrong. But, I don't think he's going to go on there today in front of a microphone and say Billy Epler and Buck Showalter are fired. Just don't see that happening. So anyway, let's get you ready for the game tonight, which will obviously take place after the Steve Cohen interview at Citi Field. First, we'll get to the Yankee game tonight, and then we'll get to the Met game here shortly after the Yankee game. So tonight you got the Yankees-A's. Domingo Germán on the mound for the Yankees, 4-5 with a 5.10 ERA. 2 bad starts in a row. Hopefully he can give you at least 6 innings against the A's. He should. And J.P. Sears, former Yankee, 1-5 with a 4.10 ERA. Tonight, going for the A's. As for the Mets, 7:10 Eastern, you got Wade Miley on the mound for the Brewers. He's 5-2 with a 2.91 ERA. And for the Mets, you've got Kodai Senga on the mound. He is 6-5 with a 3.52 ERA. Over-under set at 8.5 for tonight's Game 3 of the 4 games set at Citi Field. So that'll do it for the podcast here today. Comment down below your thoughts on the 2 potential Yankee trade options in Elaine Thomas and Jameer Candelario. And also comment down below, what do you think Steve Cohen's going to say today? Mets fans, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the Steve Cohen press conference today? Do you think it's going to be something he's going to say anything of substance? Is it going to be same old, same old? What are we going to hear tonight from Steve Cohen before the Mets take the field for the 3rd game of a 4-game set against the Brewers at home? So that we'll recap it all tomorrow. If it's anything of substance, we'll get into it tomorrow on the show. If it's the same old stuff, I'm not going to, I'll mention it to start the show, but if he says something of substance, if he says something of, hey, changes will be made if we don't turn this thing around before the All-Star break or before the, trade deadline, then, then I will definitely talk about it. But we'll see. We'll see what he says. So that'll do it for the podcast here today. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.